"That woman in the photo was in my house," said the poor woman to the Duke. "She died 10 years ago. Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from." Snow had started to fall again by the time Isabella Moore saw the house on the hill. She had been walking for hours. Her toes were numb inside cracked boots. Her skirts were damp. The wind cut across the open fields like a sharp hand. Still, she kept her eyes on the distant shape of the great stone house. People in the village called it Montgomery Hall. To Isabella, it looked less like a house and more like a world that did not belong to her. She pulled her thin shawl closer and whispered to herself, if only to hear a human voice. "Just a little farther," she murmured. "Then you may rest, foolish girl. If they turn you away, you may lie down in a ditch and be done with it." Her breath came out in small puffs. She thought of the cottage she had left that morning. A single room, a cold hearth, a bed that had never felt emptier than it had the night before. The night that Lady had sat beside her. She tried not to think of it. It made her heart race in a way that had nothing to do with the cold, yet the memory refused to leave her. A soft voice, a gentle hand on her arm, the lamplight that had seemed to burn brighter, and then, without warning, dim as if something unseen had passed through it. "Go to the house on the hill," the woman had said. "They owe you more than they know." Isabella had wanted to ask how, why, who, but when she lifted her head, the chair was empty. The door was still locked from inside. There had been no sound of footsteps, no rustle of skirts leaving. All that remained was the faint scent of something clean and unfamiliar, and the strange certainty that she had not been dreaming. Isabella staggered up the last rise. The great house rose before her now, dark against the pale sky. Its many windows looked blind and cold. Smoke rose from a few chimneys, promising warmth that did not belong to her. Her hand shook as she reached for the heavy brass knocker. For a moment, she hesitated. She had knocked on many doors in her life, asking for work or for an old dress to mend or a crust of bread. Most had closed in her face. Some had never opened at all. "This is different," she whispered. "You must try." You promised her you would try. The knocker fell with a thud. The sound echoed inside the stone like something waking. She waited. The wind tugged at her shawl. No answer came. She knocked again, louder this time, a little desperate. At last, she heard footsteps on the other side. A bolt slid. The door opened a narrow space, and a woman's face appeared. She was around 50, her hair pulled back, her expression sharp and tired. "Yes?" the woman asked. Isabella swallowed. "Please, ma'am, forgive me for disturbing you. My name is Isabella Moore. I came to ask if there might be work. Any work at all. I can scrub floors, carry coal, mend linen. I will take whatever you offer. I have no one else and nowhere to go." The woman's eyes traveled over her. Isabella could feel the judgment there, the worn coat, the soaked hem, the chapped hands, the hunger hollowing her cheeks. "This is not a charity house," the woman said. "This is the residence of His Grace, the Duke of Montgomery. We do not hire strangers from the road on a whim." The words struck Isabella like small stones, but she kept her chin up. "I understand, ma'am. Only, I was told to come." She heard how foolish it sounded and rushed on. "I mean, someone spoke to me. She said this house owed me more than it knew. I do not claim to understand it, but I thought I must at least knock before I give up." The woman's brows drew together. "Who told you such a thing?" Isabella's mouth went dry. She could not bring herself to say, "A lady who vanished from my cottage as if she had never been there." "It was a woman," she said instead, "older, kind. She knew of this house. She said the master was a just man." The woman at the door gave a short, skeptical breath. "His Grace is many things. He does not care for tricks, nor do I. I am Mrs. McDougall, housekeeper. If you seek employment, it is for me to consider first. Wait here." She opened the door just enough to let Isabella step inside the great entrance hall. Then she closed it behind her with a firm click and marched away, her steps echoing over the stone floor. The hall was vast and high. Isabella felt tiny in it, like a smudge on a clean page. She did not dare move more than a few steps from the door. Her shoes left faint, damp marks on the flagstones. She stood there, her hands clutched together, and listened. The house spoke in soft noises. Somewhere someone closed a door. Faint voices drifted from a distant corridor, too far to understand. The tick of a clock marked an ordinary time that felt, to her, like the edge of something. She thought Mrs. McDougall would return in a few minutes. She did not. Minutes stretched. The cold from the door seeped into Isabella's bones. The warmth she had expected from such a house did not reach the great hall. It remained a half-lit, echoing space. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other. Her legs ached. Her stomach twisted in longing whenever she imagined a kitchen fire, a loaf of bread, a bowl of soup. A single bench stood against the wall, polished by many years of use. She looked at it and then quickly away. She did not dare sit without permission. Time crawled. She began to talk to herself under her breath, to keep from listening to the rasp of her own breathing. "She will come," she said softly. "She has only gone to speak to him. He is a duke. Dukes must be consulted. When she returns, she will either send you away or give you work. Either way, you will know. You must only stand here and not fall." Her knees trembled. She tried to count the strokes of the clock but lost track. The air in the hall felt thinner by the minute. Her fingers, curled inside her sleeves, tingled and then went numb. A small line of water slipped from her wet hem and trailed across the floor. No one came. At last the edges of her vision began to blur. She felt as if she was swaying, though she did her best to stand still. The bench called to her like something forbidden and tempting. "Just a moment," she whispered. "You may sit for just a moment. If they come and find you sitting, you will rise at once and apologize. It is better than falling flat on your face." She took a step. The flagstone seemed to tilt. She caught herself against the wall, gasping. Her palm pressed against the cold stone. To her right, a narrow door stood slightly ajar. It was not grand, not like the great double doors farther down. It looked like the entrance to some side room, perhaps a sitting room or an office. From within, no sound came, only a faint stillness, different from the open hall. Isabella hesitated. "You must not wander," she told herself. "They would be right to throw you out if they found you prying." Another wave of dizziness rose. Dark spots danced in front of her eyes. Her pulse pounded in her ears. "If you faint here in the hall," she thought, "they will say you made a scene. If you lean on some chair in that room for just a moment, you may not fall." Her hand slid from the wall to the door. Her fingers touched the edge of the wood. It moved under the slight pressure, opening just wide enough to let her slip through. She went in. The air in the room felt warmer, though no fire crackled nearby. There was a rug beneath her feet, softer than the stone. She clung to the door a moment, breathing slowly, willing the spinning in her head to ease. She did not look at the furniture, at the drapes, at the tall windows. Her gaze was drawn at once toward the far wall. There, in a carved frame almost as tall as she was, hung a single portrait. The woman in it seemed to fill the room. Her face was neither young nor very old. There were lines at the corners of her eyes, the kind left by years of concern and of smiling. Her dark hair was gathered at the back of her head, simple but elegant. Her dress was fine, but what struck Isabella was not the richness of the fabric. It was the eyes. They were kind, steady, as if the woman inside the frame were looking at her alone. Isabella's breath left her in a single broken sound. "That is not possible," she whispered. She took a step closer. Then another. Her heart hammered against her ribs. A shiver ran from the back of her neck down her spine. The painted woman was the same who had sat in her poor cottage the night before. The same gentle tilt of the head, the same way of holding her hands together, loosely, as if in quiet thought. The same calm authority in the line of her mouth. Isabella could almost hear the voice again. "Do not lose hope, child. Go to the house on the hill." Her own voice shook as she spoke to the empty room. "It is you," she said. "You were there. Here you are, and yet you left my house without a sound. How can you be here?" Her vision blurred. It took her a moment to realize tears had filled her eyes. She dashed them away with the back of her hand, angry with herself. "You are a painting," she told the lady in the frame, half in fear, half in defiance. "But you were in my room. You touched my arm. You spoke my name. Who are you? What do you want with me?" The room remained silent. The portrait did not move. Still, Isabella's skin prickled as if watched. She sank onto a nearby chair without quite meaning to. Her legs would carry her no farther. She pressed her hands together in her lap, her gaze fixed on the painted face. "If you wished me here," she whispered, "I have come, but no one speaks to me. Perhaps they have decided already that I am not worth the trouble. Perhaps I am a fool to have believed you." "You are not a fool," she heard herself answer, mimicking the voice from the night before as if she could conjure it back. Behind her, a floorboard creaked. She froze. Slowly, she turned her head. A man stood just inside the door, tall enough that he seemed to diminish the room. He wore a dark coat well cut to broad shoulders, and his dark hair was smoothed back from a face too controlled to be gentle. His eyes, a clear grey, were fixed on her with chilly astonishment. Isabella sprang to her feet so quickly the chair scraped the floor. I beg your pardon," she stammered. "I did not mean to intrude, sir. I was told to wait, but I began to feel unwell, and the door was open, and—" His gaze moved from her to the portrait, then back again. "What are you doing in this room?" he asked, his voice low even, but edged with something dangerous. Isabella clutched her shawl. "I needed to sit, your grace," she guessed, remembering the housekeeper's words. "I thought no one would mind if I rested a moment. I will leave at once. I meant no harm." His brows drew together. Now that he was closer, she could see that he was not so very old, perhaps in his early 30s, but there was a heaviness at his mouth that did not belong to youth. "You should not be here," he said. "This room is not for visitors. Mrs. McDougall should have known better than to let you wander." "She did not," Isabella said quickly. "I came of my own foolishness. I only wished to—" She stopped. The words she had been about to say sounded mad even in her thoughts. "I only wished to see the woman who came to my house." The man followed her earlier gaze and regarded the portrait now with a look she could not read. For a moment some of the hardness in his face eased. Then he turned back to her, sharper than before. "What drew you to this particular room?" he asked. "Of all the doors in this house, why this one?" Isabella hesitated. The truth trembled at the back of her tongue. "I do not know," she said weakly. I saw the painting, and I knew her." His eyes narrowed. "You knew her?" "Yes." The word escaped before she could stop it. He took a step closer. The distance between them shrank until she could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the tension in his jaw. His presence felt like a wall. "Explain yourself," he said. "You claim to know the woman in that portrait." Isabella swallowed. Her hands twisted together. "She came to my cottage," she said quietly. "Last night, for a heartbeat, nothing moved. The man's expression did not change at once. It only grew very still, like water icing over. "Last night," he repeated. "Yes, Your Grace," Isabella answered. "I did not know that she belonged to this house. Not until I saw her here." "You are saying," he went on carefully, each word laid down as if it might break, "that the woman you see in that painting visited your home, in the flesh, yesterday evening." Isabella's cheeks burned. It sounded absurd now, spoken aloud in this grand room under his clear, skeptical gaze. Yet she could not make herself deny it. "She did," Isabella insisted, her voice shaking. "I was alone. The cold was so sharp I thought my blood might freeze. I had nothing to eat and no hope left. Then I woke, or thought I woke, and she was there, sitting in the chair by my bed. She spoke to me as if she had known me all my life. She told me not to give up. She told me to come here, to this house on the hill. She said it owed me more than it knew. How else should I have thought of this place? I have never seen it up close. I had no other reason to come." His eyes flickered at that phrase. "Owes you more than it knows." But the change was gone as quickly as it appeared. "And then?" he asked. "What happened after this visit?" "I turned my head for a moment," Isabella said, her chest tight. "I do not even recall why. Perhaps I heard the wind. When I looked back, she was gone. The door was still bolted. There was nowhere for her to go. I told myself I had dreamed her, but my arm still felt where her hand had rested. I cannot explain it, Your Grace. I only know that when morning came I could not ignore what she said, so I set out for this house." Silence settled between them, heavy and thick. The man studied her as if trying to see through her skin and bone into whatever lay beneath. Isabella forced herself to hold his gaze, though every instinct begged her to drop her eyes. If she looked away now, he would think her guilty of something. At last, he spoke again. "And you recognized her," he said, nodding once toward the portrait. You walked into a house you had never seen inside, into a private room you had no business in, and you claimed to recognize the lady of that painting as the same woman. Yes, Isabella whispered. I could not mistake her. Look at her face. It is hers. I swear it. His voice dropped a fraction. Do you have any notion who she is? Isabella shook her head slowly. Only that she must be someone important to you, the way you look at her, the way this room is kept. His jaw tightened. He turned from her to the painting again, and his eyes softened in a way that twisted something inside her. She was my mother, he said quietly. Lady Margaret Montgomery, Duchess of Montgomery. Isabella's breath caught. Your mother, yes. He still did not look at her. The lady you say visited your cottage last night in the flesh, with a warm hand and kind words, has been dead for 10 years. The room seemed to sway. Isabella reached for the back of the chair to steady herself. Dead, she echoed. 10 years. He faced her again. The softness in his gaze was gone. In its place stood steel. You come to my house uninvited. You wander into my mother's private room. You stand before her portrait and say she sent you. Do you expect me to believe that her spirit crossed half the county to comfort a girl she never knew? Isabella's heart thudded painfully. I do not know what I expect, Your Grace. I only know what I saw, what I felt. I did not come to mock you. I came because I had nothing left and she told me to. His lips thinned. People will do much for the chance to secure a place in a ducal household, inventing stories, calling on the dead, hoping to stir a guilty conscience. He took another step toward her. You are poor, you are hungry, I can see that. Perhaps someone thought you a convenient tool. No one sent me, Isabella said, flinching at the edge in his voice. I live alone. I spoke of this to no one. If someone is offended, it is not by my wish. I would never use your mother's memory for gain. I did not even know her name until this moment. His eyes held hers for a long, tense moment. The ticking of a small clock on the mantel grew loud. At last he spoke again, his tone quiet but cutting. Then I will ask you once more, he said. Who taught you to speak of my mother, and what do you hope to gain with such a story? For a moment Isabella thought she might faint before she found any words at all. No one taught me, she said at last. There is no one to teach me. I am alone in the world, Your Grace. I earn my bread by washing and mending. I speak to no one who would know anything of your family. He watched her, expression unreadable. For you expect me to believe, he said slowly, that a woman who died 10 years ago walked into a poor cottage, gave you advice and vanished, and that no one else had a hand in it. I expect nothing, she replied, her voice low. Believe me or not, I have told you the truth. If it offends you, I am sorry. It was not my desire to disturb your peace. I came only because, if there was a chance she was right, I could not stay where I was and starve. Her words hung between them. Outside wind brushed against the windows. He studied her face. Her cheeks were flushed, not with health, but with cold and strain. There was no cunning in her eyes, only fear and stubborn honesty. You are certain you have never been here before? He asked. Never seen this portrait, never heard my mother's name. I swear I have not, Isabella said. I have walked past this estate from a distance, that is all. The big house on the hill. People speak of it with envy or resentment, but never of the family within. It is too far from our lives. He gave a short, humorless breath. That, at least, is true. For the first time she saw something like weariness in his face. The door opened without a knock. Mrs. McDougall stepped in and stopped short at the sight of Isabella standing there with the Duke. Your Grace, she said, flustered. I beg your pardon. I did not know the girl had... She did not trouble you for long, Alistair said coolly. You left her in the hall and forgot her. She came here to faint in private, I suspect. Mrs. McDougall's mouth tightened. I am sure I meant no neglect, sir. I simply thought, it is done, he said. We will speak of it later. The housekeeper lowered her eyes. Yes, Your Grace. She shot Isabella a glance that was not friendly. Alistair returned his attention to Isabella. You ask for work, he said. Any work? Yes, Your Grace, she replied. Even if it is harsh, ill-paid, and beneath what you might hope for in your dreams of being chosen by a duchess from beyond the grave. There was a faint edge in his tone. She flushed. I have no such dreams. I asked for work, not charity. I will take the harsh and the ill-paid gladly if it keeps me from the road. He tapped a finger once against the back of a chair, as if considering an internal argument. Then he spoke, almost to himself. "My mother did not make a habit of visiting strangers," he said. "Yet some of what you have said is precise." He looked up at the portrait. For a heartbeat his expression softened again. Then he straightened. "Very well," he said. "You may remain, for now." Isabella's knees nearly gave way. "Remain, Your Grace." "As a temporary servant," he added. "Under Mrs. McDougall's supervision. If you work hard and cause no disturbance, you may earn your place. If I hear of deceit, you will leave at once. There will be no second chance. Is that understood?" "Yes," she said quickly. "Yes, Your Grace, thank you." "Do not thank me yet," he replied. "This house is not kind to the weak, and if you mean to stay, you will not wander into private rooms without invitation again." "No, Your Grace," she said, lowering her eyes. "It will not happen." He walked past her to the door and held it open pointedly. "Mrs. McDougall," he said, "she is in your charge. Find some useful corner for her, somewhere she cannot do much harm." "Yes, Your Grace," the housekeeper answered. Isabella stepped toward the door, her heart pounding. As she passed him, she could feel the weight of his gaze. She did not dare look up. "And Miss Moore," he said. She stopped. "When you think of my mother," he went on quietly, "I suggest you speak to no one else of what you claim to have seen. Not in this house, not in the village. Do you understand me?" Isabella swallowed. "I understand." "Good." His voice cooled again. "Go." Mrs. McDougall led her out briskly, lips pressed thin. They walked through a maze of corridors and down a flight of stairs. The air grew warmer, the sounds louder, clatter of pots, voices calling, the life of the servants' quarters. "You have a talent for trouble," Mrs. McDougall said at last. "I did not seek it," Isabella answered quietly. "No. You walk in from the snow, and within the hour you have His Grace talking of you in his mother's own room. That is not usual for a scullery maid." "I did not know it was her room," Isabella said. "I barely knew where I put my feet. I was ready to fall." The housekeeper made a dismissive sound. "You will remember this," she said. "His Grace may keep you for reasons of his own, but down here you are one more pair of hands. You will do as you are told. You will not seek his notice. You will not gossip. If word spreads that you came with stories of ghosts, you will regret it." "I have no wish to gossip," Isabella said. "I am grateful to stay." "You ought to be," Mrs. McDougall replied. "The kitchens are already full. The laundries as well. I do not know where to put you." She stopped outside a low door and opened it. A rush of heat and steam met them. Inside, women moved between tables, scrubbing, chopping, stirring. A boy carried a basket of coal. The smell of baking bread struck Isabella almost like a blow. It was so sudden and rich. "This is the scullery," Mrs. McDougall said. "You will begin here. Dishes, pots, floors. You will rise before the sun and go to bed after it. If you last the week, we will speak again." "Yes, ma'am," Isabella said, her chest tight with a strange mixture of dread and gratitude. A stout woman with sleeves rolled above her elbows looked up as they entered. "Mrs. Harris," the housekeeper called. "This one is Isabella Moore. His Grace has consented to take her on. See that she earns her bread, and keep your eye on her." Mrs. Harris eyed Isabella with frank curiosity. "I have no time for watching strays," she said, but there was no particular malice in her tone. "If she breaks a plate, she will wish she had never come." "She breaks anything of value, you tell me," Mrs. McDougall replied. "And, girl," Isabella straightened. "Yes, ma'am. If anyone asks how you came here, you say you were hired for your strong back and quiet tongue. Nothing more." She held Isabella's gaze until the girl nodded. "Yes, ma'am." "Good." The housekeeper turned and left, her steps brisk and sure. Within minutes, Isabella found herself with her sleeves rolled up, hands plunged into hot, soapy water. The work was immediate and all-consuming. Plates came and went, pots crashed onto the side tables. Someone shouted for more hot water, then for clean cloths, then for coal. "Move faster," Mrs. Harris barked. "Those plates do not scrub themselves, and mind the good china. If you chip it, Mrs. McDougall will hang you by your thumbs." "Yes, ma'am," Isabella panted. Her body fell into the familiar rhythm of hard labor. Scrub, rinse, place. Scrub, rinse, place. Her shoulders burned. Her back ached. Yet under the ache there was a strange relief. She was inside. Hours later, when the first rush of work eased, she found herself next to another girl about her age, drying cups. "I am Mary," the girl said without looking up. "You may pass me those." "You are the new one." "Yes," Isabella said. "Isabella. Where do you come from?" Mary asked. "A cottage near the village," Isabella replied. "Not far." Mary snorted softly. "None of us come from far, except His Grace when he returns from Edinburgh, and the fine cousins. You will see them soon enough. Just keep your head down when you do." "Fine cousins," Isabella repeated. Mary nodded. "His Grace's kin, especially Mr. Edwin. He thinks himself half a duke already. He likes to remind everyone else that they are something less." "Mr. Edwin," Isabella murmured. "Yes. If he speaks to you, it will not be from kindness," Mary warned. "You are thin enough that he may not notice you, but do not count on luck. I would stay close to the pots. They are safer." Isabella gave a small, tired smile. "I will remember," she said. The day went on. By the time the evening meal was over and the last pot scrubbed, Isabella's arms shook each time she lifted a dish. Her feet throbbed. Yet when she crawled onto a narrow pallet in a small room shared with 3 other maids, she felt something she had not felt in months. She felt that for that night at least, she would not go hungry. The next days followed in the same pattern, work from dawn to dark, scolding when she was too slow, a rare nod of approval when she managed to keep pace. She learned the names of the other kitchen workers, the cooks, the footmen who came and went with trays. Upstairs remained a different world. She glimpsed it in moments when she carried a basket into the back hall or fetched water near the main staircase. She saw polished wood, carpets, and the occasional flash of a lady's gown. One afternoon, near the end of the week, Mrs. Harris handed her a folded bundle. "Take this upstairs," she said. "Mrs. McDougall wants these linen cloths in the small dining room. Do not dawdle. And do not stare at the guests as if they were circus beasts." "Yes, ma'am." Isabella wiped her wet hands on her apron, smoothed her hair as best she could, and took the bundle. Her heart beat a little faster as she went up the servants' staircase and into the quieter upper hall. Her steps were soft. She tried to look straight ahead, but everything drew her eye: the sconces, the carpets, the paintings. She found the small dining room with care. The door stood slightly open. Voices drifted from within, light and amused. "Quite sure he will come to his senses," a male voice said. "Montgomery cannot remain forever shut up in this gloomy cave, with only ledgers and servants for company. He must marry, and marry well. The title demands it." Another voice, a woman's, laughed softly. "You are very certain, Edwin. One might think you had already chosen the bride." "Perhaps I have," the man replied. "There are ladies in Edinburgh who would be only too pleased to fix Montgomery Hall more firmly among their circle. A man in his position owes it to his family." Isabella hesitated. She did not wish to interrupt, but the housekeeper had told her not to dally. She edged the door open a little more. Inside, a table had been laid, the remnants of a meal still scattered across it. A man with light brown hair sat at ease, leaning back in his chair. His face was handsome in a polished way, his clothes impeccable. Across from him sat a lady in pale blue, her gloved hand resting near a glass. Further down the table, Alistair sat straighter, his expression cool. The lady glanced toward the door and saw Isabella. Her brows lifted. "Oh," she said, "another pair of ears. Do come in, girl, since you are already halfway." Isabella stepped in at once, flushing. "I beg your pardon, ma'am," she said. "I was sent to bring fresh linen cloths. I did not mean to disturb you." The man turned to look at her. His eyes traveled quickly over her plain dress, her tired face. Something like amusement flickered there. "This is what you hire these days, cousin," he said to Alistair. "You scour the fields for strays." Alistair's gaze shifted to Isabella. For a moment, his face betrayed nothing. Then he said quietly, "She is new to the household. That is all you need to know." "New and thin as a rake," the man remarked. "Do they not feed you where you came from, girl?" Isabella swallowed. "No, sir," she said before she could stop herself. "Not often." The lady laughed lightly. "She has a tongue, Edwin." "You must be careful." Edwin smiled as if enjoying a game. "What is your name?" he asked. "Isabella, sir." "Isabella. A pretty name for such a small creature." He looked back at Alistair. Perhaps you intend to fill the house with them, cousin. A collection of Isabellas and Marys and Janes to remind you that the world beyond your ledgers exists. That will do, Alistair said, his tone flat. Isabella's cheeks burned. She kept her eyes on the table. Set the linen, and go, Mrs. MacDougall's voice echoed in her memory. She stepped forward, placed the folded cloths on a sideboard with careful hands, and turned to leave as quietly as she had come. As she reached the door, Edwin spoke again, his voice pitched just loud enough to carry. "We must forgive Montgomery," he said to the lady. "He has always had a certain weakness for lost causes. Poor tenants, broken roofs, sentimental memories. Perhaps now he adopts kitchen maids as well." The lady gave another soft laugh. "That would be a scandal." "Not a large one," Edwin replied. "Who would care what a lonely duke does with his charity, so long as he marries a woman of proper rank in the end?" Isabella's shoulders stiffened. She did not look back, but she felt the heat rising in her face. The words settled on her skin like dust. In the corridor she drew a slow breath. "Keep your head down," Mary had said. She would. The days passed. The memory of Edwin's mocking tone lingered, but work left little room for brooding. Whenever Isabella glimpsed Alistair at a distance, he was moving briskly with a sheaf of papers in hand, or speaking quietly with the steward. He did not look toward the kitchen door where she stood, yet she could not forget the way his voice had cut Edwin's amusement short. One evening, after a long day, Isabella carried a bucket of ashes down a back passage. It was quieter here. Most of the household had gone to rest. A few footsteps still echoed above. A murmur of voices carried faintly from the drawing room. She emptied the bucket into the ash bin and turned to go back. A soft sound touched her ear. It was not a voice, not exactly. More like the sigh of a draught where none should be. The hair on her arms rose. She stood still, listening. There it was again. A faint, almost musical creak. She followed it without quite deciding to. Down the corridor, past a narrow window, around a bend she had rarely taken. The stones here felt cooler under her worn soles. The light was dimmer. At the end of the passage, half hidden in shadow, stood a door she had never noticed before. It was plain wood, unlike the carved doors in the main hall. The sound seemed to come from beyond it. Her heart beat faster. "Do not be foolish," she told herself. "Doors creak, houses breathe, that is all." Yet something in her chest tugged her forward. She reached the door and laid her hand against it. The wood was cool. The handle felt stiff under her fingers, as if it had not been turned much. She hesitated. If she were found here, she would have no excuse. She had no orders that took her to this part of the house. Still, the same strange pull she had felt on that first day pressed against her, somewhere between her ribs. "Just look," she whispered. "Then go. 5 seconds. No more." Her fingers tightened on the handle. Before she could turn it, a voice spoke behind her, sharp and close. "What are you doing here?" Isabella spun around so fast her hand slipped from the handle. Alistair stood a few steps away, his face half in shadow, his eyes very clear. "I asked," he said, "what you are doing here." Her heart thudded against her ribs. I was carrying ashes, Your Grace," she said. "I heard a sound. I thought perhaps something was loose, or a shutter needed closing. I followed it without thinking. I did not mean to trespass. Yet here you are," he replied. "With your hand on a door you have no business touching." She looked at the wood behind her. "I did not open it," she said quickly. My fingers were there for a moment. I am sorry." He stepped forward, studying the door with a strange expression. "Who told you of this passage?" he asked. "Has someone been amusing themselves below stairs, sending you on little adventures?" "No one," she said. "I had never seen this door until just now, I swear it. I would not lie to you, Your Grace." He regarded her for a long moment as if weighing her soul. "You have a habit," he said slowly, "of finding the places in this house that are most private to my family." She bit her lip. "I did not intend it." "That does not change the result," he said. He brushed past her, his coat sleeve almost touching her arm, and took the handle himself. The wood creaked under his grip. "I have not opened this room in some time," he said quietly. "It is not for servants, it is not for me most days." "Then I should go," she offered. "I should not be here at all." He did not answer at once. His jaw tightened. Then he said, "No, since you were so determined to find it, You may as well see where it leads. He turned the handle. The door opened with a reluctant sigh. Isabella hesitated on the threshold. Alistair entered first. After a moment, she followed. The room beyond was small but not bare. The air smelled faintly of paper and dust. A tall window looked out over the grounds, its curtains drawn back just enough to admit the last light of day. A writing desk stood near the window, its surface scattered with a few old pens and a closed inkwell. Along one wall, a narrow couch and a bookshelf. On the opposite wall, another, smaller portrait of Lady Margaret, this time seated at the very desk before them, head bent slightly as if listening. Isabella's breath caught. "This was hers," she said. "Yes," Alistair answered. "My mother's private room. She liked to escape here when the house grew too loud." He moved forward and rested his hand lightly on the back of the chair. "No one has used it since her death," he went on. "The servants clean it barely. Nothing more. Sometimes I come to remember. Sometimes not even that. There are days when memory feels like a weight." Isabella stood just inside the door, unsure if she should go further. "If you wish me to leave, I will," she said. "I should not disturb whatever peace you find here." He studied her. "You say you heard a sound," he said. "What kind of sound?" She thought back. "Like a board settling, or a chair moved very gently. It drew me along the corridor, Your Grace. I know how it sounds, like foolish talk. Yet it is true." His eyes flicked to the room's corners, then to the desk. "That chair has not moved in years," he said. "No one comes here but me." "Then perhaps it was nothing," she said. "The house shifting, as you say. I only followed without thinking." He went to the desk. His hand hovered over a stack of papers, then settled on a leather-bound book. It looked like a journal, its edges worn. "I have sometimes thought I should burn these," he said quietly. "There are things written here that were meant only for her eyes and mine, but I never do. Cowardice, perhaps, or sentiment." He opened the book, flicked through a few pages and stopped. His brow furrowed. "What is it?" Isabella asked before she could stop herself. He did not answer at once. He read in silence, his lips pressing more tightly together. At last he said, "My mother wrote here of the tenants, of the way some of them were neglected long before I became Duke. She reproaches my father for his indifference. She speaks of a young girl in the village, left alone after an illness took her parents. She says she should have done more, that the house owes such as her more than it knows." Isabella's fingers tightened on her apron. "She wrote those words," she whispered. "The same?" He nodded once. Isabella swallowed hard. "Perhaps she meant some other girl," she said. "There are many poor in the village. I am only one. And yet—" She trailed off. "And yet," he prompted. "And yet she came to me," Isabella said, her voice barely above a breath. "Whoever she once meant, it was my door she crossed. My name she spoke. I cannot explain it, Your Grace. I do not ask you to explain it. I only know that when she looked at me, I felt seen for the first time in years." He closed the journal slowly. "Words are easy to twist," he said. "A coincidence of phrases does not prove that the dead walk." "I agree," Isabella said. "I am not asking you to believe in ghosts. I barely dare believe it myself. But perhaps what she wrote long ago lingered in this house, in your memory, in the mind of God. Perhaps what you should have done for that girl, someone chose to do for me." She flushed. "Forgive me. I speak too boldly." He did not rebuke her. "Boldness is not always a fault," he said. "My mother preferred honest speech to flattery. It made her unpopular with some." He moved around the desk, pulled out the chair, and sat. For the first time, Isabella saw him in a posture that was not guarded. He looked almost younger. "How old were you?" she asked softly. "When she died?" He looked up, surprised that she would ask. Then something in his face eased. 23, he said. "Old enough to understand the loss, young enough to resent it." "Did she speak to you of the poor?" Isabella asked. "Often." The answer was in his eyes before he said it. "Constantly," he replied. "If there was one subject that could make her quarrel with my father, it was that. She would return from the village with her hands still red from some kitchen scald and talk of children with no shoes. He would remind her that his duty was to the estate, to Parliament. She would remind him that the estate meant nothing without the people. It seems she did not change much," Isabella said softly. "The woman who sat in my cottage spoke like that. As if the world were full of duties most people try to forget. He looked at her sharply. "What else did she say?" he asked. Isabella thought back. "She told me I had been left alone too long," she said slowly, "that it was not my fault. That shame belonged to those who could have helped and did not. She touched my arm. She said, 'I should have found you sooner, child.'" A quiet fell over the room. Alistair's hand tightened slightly on the edge of the desk. "My mother writes here," he said, touching the journal, "that she had heard of a girl, daughter of a tenant, left without family. She intended to call, to offer some assistance. The entry breaks off. The next speaks of a different matter. Perhaps she was interrupted. Perhaps she forgot. She apologizes to the child she failed to seek and says she prays someone will make amends in time." He stood abruptly, as if the chair had become too small for him. "This is fanciful," he said. "We are twisting half-sentences into prophecy. It is not like me." Isabella lowered her gaze. "Is it wrong," she asked quietly, "to hope that someone once thought of us kindly, even if we never knew?" "It is dangerous," he said. "Hope asks payment in the end." She looked up. "And yet you give a stranger a place in your house because a letter of your mother's mentions some poor girl. Is that not hope as well?" He gave a short, reluctant smile. "You suggest I am no better than you," he said. "Perhaps we are both in danger, Miss Moore." She blinked. "You call me Miss," she said. "Would you prefer girl?" he asked. "No," she said quickly. I only noticed." He glanced back at the smaller portrait on the wall. "If my mother had met you," he said, his voice quieter, "I believe she would have insisted I treat you with a certain consideration." "I ask no special treatment," Isabella replied. "Only the chance to work quietly, and not be called a liar at every turn." "You will earn more suspicion than smiles in this place," he said. "Servants do not like mysteries, nor do relatives." He moved toward the door. "There are things here you do not yet understand," he went on. "Cousins who watch my every choice, a solicitor who prefers the estate to move in predictable lines. They will not welcome anything that unsettles the order of things, including you." "Then why keep me?" Isabella asked before she could stop herself. He paused. "I do not quite know," he said. "I tell myself it is because you stirred old guilt, or because you named a phrase that no stranger should know, or because my mother would haunt me if I turned you out without inquiry." His mouth curved, almost wry. "It may also be because I dislike the thought of being the sort of man who sends a hungry woman back into the snow," he added. "That sounds very noble when I say it aloud. It is less so when I remember that I hesitated." "I am grateful even for your hesitation," she said. He nodded once. "You should return to your duties," he said. "If Mrs. McDougall finds you gone too long, she will storm the house like a regiment." He opened the door and stepped aside to let her pass. She walked past him, then stopped and looked back once at the room. "It is a peaceful place," she said. "I hope you will not close it because of me." His eyes followed her gaze. "I have closed worse things for better reasons," he said. "We will see." The days that followed were strange and sharper-edged. Word spread among the staff that the Duke had been seen in his mother's old room with the new maid. No one knew exactly what had passed, but in a house, stories filled gaps quickly. "Mind your steps," Mary whispered one morning as they peeled potatoes side by side. "Mr. Hardy says the solicitor is asking questions. He wants to know how you came here, what His Grace does with himself when he disappears." "The solicitor?" Isabella repeated. "Mr. Graham?" Mary nodded. "He has a nose for coins and secrets. I would not like him turned in my direction." "I am not a secret," Isabella said, though she did not quite believe it. "To men like him, anything unexpected is a threat," Mary replied. That afternoon, as Isabella carried a loaded tray down a service hall, she nearly collided with a thin man in a dark coat. He stepped back with a brisk motion, his eyes narrowing. "Watch where you go," he said. "These walls are not made to accommodate careless hands." "I beg your pardon, sir," Isabella said, lowering her eyes. He looked at her again, more closely this time. "You are the new maid," he said. "The one who arrived half dead on the doorstep." "Yes, sir," she said. "Isabella Moore." "Moore," he repeated. "I am Mr. Graham, the family's solicitor. It is my business to know who moves in and out of this house." "Yes, sir." "I hear," he said lightly, "that His Grace has taken an interest in your story. That is unusual." He is not given to sentiment. My story is only that I needed work, Isabella said carefully. He gave it. Mr. Graham's lips curved, but the smile did not reach his eyes. I hope that is all it is, he said, for your sake as much as his. This house is not a stage for tales told to amuse bored nobles. If you have been prompted to speak of certain matters— He paused. You would be wise to forget your lines. I have been prompted by no one, she said, keeping her voice steady. I have no lines to forget. He watched her a moment longer, then stepped aside. See that it stays that way, he said. We have enough ghosts in this family without the living trying to invent more. As he walked away, Isabella felt a chill settle around her shoulders, despite the warmth of the tray in her hands. Later that week, Edwin returned. He arrived with a flourish, speaking loudly in the entrance hall about the boredom of city life and the charm of the country when one did not have to work it. In the kitchen, Mary rolled her eyes. He thinks his jokes very fine, she said. Wait until he starts them on you again. I shall try to be invisible, Isabella replied. Invisibility proved difficult. That evening, a small gathering took place in one of the drawing rooms. Isabella did not see it. She only heard of it from the other maids. Edwin was there, of course, along with the lady in blue and a few more guests. Mr. Graham hovered at the edge, as he always did. Somewhere between the course of tea and the serving of wine, the talk turned, as it often did, to ghosts and omens. The old house lent itself to such stories. I am sure this place is haunted, the lady in blue said, with a shiver that was only half sincere. Any house this old must have a few restless spirits. If there are ghosts here, Edwin replied, they are all old tenants come to complain of missed rents. Laughter followed. Or of poor management, someone added. Not at all, Edwin said. If anyone haunts these walls, it is Aunt Margaret, scolding us all for not being kind enough to the poor. She had a passion for them, you know. Tiresome business. One cannot save the world with handkerchiefs and loaves. Your aunt was a good woman, Alistair said quietly. Yes, yes, Edwin replied carelessly. But even a good woman may leave troublesome shadows. Why, I hear her name whispered below stairs now. Some kitchen sprite claims she sees the old Duchess in her dreams. It is only a matter of time before they start saying she walks the corridors, visiting the maids. Mr. Graham's gaze sharpened. Kitchen tales travel too quickly, he said. They should be stopped before they reach the wrong ears. The next morning, the wrong ears were waiting. Isabella was called to the housekeeper's room after breakfast. Mrs. McDougall stood behind her small desk. Mr. Graham leaned against the wall. Edwin lounged in a chair, one leg crossed over the other, watching with open interest. Sit, Mrs. McDougall said. Isabella remained standing. I prefer to stand, ma'am, she replied. As you wish, the housekeeper said. Miss Moore, Mr. Graham has brought to my attention certain rumours. The word pricked at Isabella's skin. I do not spread rumours, she said. I barely speak. And yet it seems your story travels, Edwin said lightly. You have been talking in your sleep, perhaps, or your friends in the kitchen have sharp ears. I do not tell my story to anyone, Isabella said, frowning. I was instructed not to, I obeyed. Then how is it, Mr. Graham said, his voice smooth, that when Mr. Edwin made a mild jest last night about the late Duchess's affection for the poor, one of the footmen laughed and said, Perhaps she has already come back to fetch another charity case from the village, sir. Isabella's stomach dropped. I do not know, she said. I have told no one of what passed in my cottage, only His Grace, and Mrs. McDougall, a little. The housekeeper stiffened. You told me only that a lady sent you, she said, not that you claimed it was Her Grace. I did not, Isabella said. I have not spoken her name below stairs. Yet the story is out, Mr. Graham replied, and I do not care for it. Perhaps someone overheard His Grace speaking to her, Edwin suggested lazily. Walls have ears, you know. Servants creep about like cats. Mrs. McDougall's jaw set. That will be enough, she said. Miss Moore, whether you spoke or not, trouble has followed you into this house. His Grace may indulge this nonsense, but we cannot. We have work to do. I do my work, Isabella said quietly. I came to serve. If trouble follows me, it is not by my will. Edwin rose and walked toward her, hands clasped behind his back. You must understand, he said, his voice softening into something almost kind and therefore more dangerous, that this house stands on reputation. Stories of ghosts guiding kitchen maids to the Duke's door. It does not look well. People talk. They say this or that about his mind, his grief, his judgment. We cannot have that. Surely you see, she lifted her chin. I see that you care more for what others think than for what may be true, she said. I did not invent what happened to me. It is not a story I repeat for amusement. Edwin's eyes glinted. You are bold, he said. It will not serve you long. Mr. Graham stepped forward. There is another matter, he said. A small one, but since your arrival coincides, we must be thorough. He held up his hand. In it lay a silver brooch, shaped like a leaf, its surface engraved with tiny lines. Do you recognize this? He asked. Isabella's breath caught. I have never seen it before, she said. It belonged to Lady Margaret, he went on. It has been kept in a drawer among her things since her passing. This morning, when Mrs. McDougall instructed a maid to dust that room, it was gone. An hour later, it was found near your pallet. Isabella stared. That is impossible, she said. I have never entered that room without His Grace. I have never been near her drawer. I do not even know where it is. You share that small room with others, Mrs. McDougall said slowly. Mary, Jane, and Tess. They deny touching it. They say you were the last to lie down last night and the first to rise this morning. Do you believe I stole from the dead? Isabella asked, her voice breaking. For what? I have nowhere to sell such a thing. It would point straight back to this house. Desperation makes fools of people, Edwin said. You might have thought of the price later. A shiny object in poor hands is always a temptation. Isabella felt anger rise through the fear. I have been poor all my life, she said. I have seen money pass through others' fingers like water. I know how much it costs to be caught stealing. I would not risk losing the first roof I have had in months for a trinket I cannot eat. Mr. Graham watched her calmly. The brooch was found, he said. Among your few belongings. Facts do not bend because we wish them to. Isabella looked at Mrs. McDougall. Ma'am, she said, you have seen me work. You know I am not lazy. You know I do not talk back. Have I ever given you cause to think me dishonest? The housekeeper's expression wavered. For a moment something like pity flickered there. You have worked, she said. That is true. But this is no small matter, Miss Moore. To steal from His Grace's mother is beyond forgiveness. I did not do it, Isabella whispered. Silence fell. Edwin glanced at Mr. Graham, then at the housekeeper. His Grace must be told, Mr. Graham said at last. He will decide. Alistair decided faster than she expected. He came to the housekeeper's room within the hour. Isabella stood while the others explained. Mr. Graham spoke of the whispers. Edwin mentioned the footman's foolish remark. Mrs. McDougall described the disappearance of the brooch and its discovery near Isabella's pallet. Alistair listened without interrupting. His face grew tighter with each detail. When they finished, he turned to Isabella. Is this true? He asked. That the brooch was found among your things? Yes, she said. They say it was. I did not put it there. Can you explain how it came to be there? He asked. No, she whispered. I cannot. He looked at her a long time. The first day you came, you told me a story that strained belief, he said. I chose to consider it. For my own reasons. I placed you in this house under my protection. And now a brooch that has sat untouched for 10 years vanishes from my mother's drawer and appears by your bed. His voice did not rise, but the disappointment in it struck her harder than any shout. It is too neat, she said desperately. Too simple. Someone wishes me gone. Someone who does not like that you spend time in that room again. Someone who does not wish you to remember what she wrote. You accuse others now? Mr. Graham asked. I accuse no one by name, she said. I only say this makes no sense. Alistair stirred. Sense or not, the fact remains, he said. I have to consider the order of this household. It's trust. If I appear willing to overlook theft because the thief tells a sad story, what then? I am not a thief, Isabella said. If you send me away for the crime of someone else, so be it. I cannot change your mind. But do not call me what I am not. Pain flickered in his eyes. Leave us, he said to the others. Mr. Graham and Edwin hesitated. Your Grace, I think, Mr. Graham began. I said leave us, Alistair repeated more sharply. They went. Mrs. McDougall slipped out last, closing the door behind her. For a moment, Only the crackle of the small fire broke the stillness. Alistair walked to the window, then back. He stopped in front of Isabella, his hands clasped behind him. "I do not know what to do with you," he said. "Believe me," she answered, "or do not. That is all." He gave a brief, pained laugh. "You make it sound simple," he said. "It is not. If I keep you here after this, I set myself against my own blood and those who manage my affairs. They will say I am ruled by sentiment, that I risk the estate for a maid who tells ghost stories." "And if you send me away?" she asked. "Then I will have peace," he said, "for a time, until I remember you standing in my mother's room, speaking words she once wrote, until I wonder whether I turned my back on one last thing she tried to do." He lifted the brooch from the desk where Mr. Graham had placed it earlier. The silver leaf caught the light. "My mother wore this on the day she came home from visiting the village," he said. "She said she had seen something that troubled her more than usual. She never told me what it was. I think now it may have been that girl, the one she meant to help and never did." He looked at Isabella. "I do not know if that girl was you," he went on. "I do not know if you stole this brooch or if someone wishes you ill. I only know that every choice I make here has weight." "I asked for nothing but work," Isabella said. "If you send me away, I will not return to trouble you. But you will have to live with what you decide, not I." He closed his eyes for a brief moment. "When you speak like that," he said, "you sound very much like her." He opened his eyes again, and they were cool. "I cannot ignore the evidence," he said. "I cannot defy everyone under my roof for the sake of my doubts. You must go." The words fell like stones. "When?" Isabella asked, her throat tight. "Today," he said, "before evening. You may rest an hour, gather what little you have, and take some bread from the kitchen. I will see that you are not turned out without that much. Beyond it I cannot help you." She nodded slowly. "Thank you for the bread," she said, "and for the days I was warm." He winced. "If I am wrong," he said quietly, "may God forgive me." "That is between you and him," she replied. She turned and walked out of the room on legs that felt barely real. By sunset, she had gone. Mary wept as she hugged her in the small room. "I know you did not do it," Mary said fiercely. "You never looked at anything with greed. I hope he chokes on that brooch." "Hush," Isabella said, though a faint, bitter smile touched her lips. "Do not curse a duke in his own house. It is unlucky." "Unlucky is what he has already made you," Mary answered, wiping her cheeks. Isabella took up the small bundle that held her spare dress and the little sewing kit she had carried since her mother's death. It was all she owned. Mrs. McDougall met her at the back door. Her face was stern, but her eyes were not. "I am sorry," the housekeeper said quietly. "I did not wish it to end like this." "I know," Isabella said. "You gave me work. I am grateful." "If you had only kept to your duties," Mrs. McDougall murmured. "If you had never spoken of that visit, perhaps I would still be scrubbing your pots," Isabella finished. "Perhaps I would be content with less truth, but I cannot unsay what has been." The housekeeper sighed. "There is a little money," she said, pressing a small coin into Isabella's hand. "Do not refuse. It is from me, not from the house, enough to buy you a bit of food on the road." "Thank you," Isabella whispered. "May God repay you." She stepped out into the cold. The sky was streaked with pale colors, the air sharp. She pulled her shawl tight and began to walk down the path, away from the house on the hill. She did not look back. Upstairs, in Lady Margaret's room, Alistair sat alone at the desk. The brooch lay on the surface before him, glinting faintly. He picked up the journal again, turning pages without seeing them, until a loose sheet slipped free and fell to the floor. He bent to retrieve it, frowning. It was a letter, folded, its edges slightly more worn than the rest. His name was written on the outside in his mother's hand. His breath caught. He opened it with shaking fingers and began to read. As his eyes moved over the words, the color drained from his face, and he realized with a sick jolt that if what this letter said was true, then sending Isabella away had been the gravest mistake he could have made. The letter was not long. Alistair read it once, then again, the lines blurring. He moved to the window without realizing it, the paper still in his hand. "My dear son, if you read this, it is because I am no longer there to scold you in person. You will have grown into the title, and I hope you have not let it grow too thick around your heart. There is a matter I must lay on your conscience. There is a tenant's child I failed. Her father, Henry Moore, worked the land with a diligence that never reached your father's notice. When he died, the rent was not forgiven. His widow and daughter were left alone and afraid. I intended to visit, to offer help, to find work for the girl within our walls or with a kind mistress. I delayed. There was always some dinner, some guest, some speech. When I finally sent to inquire, I learned the mother had died, and the girl had been left to drift. This house owes them more than it knows. If ever a young woman should come here in need, bearing that name or another, led by necessity and nothing more, I ask you to think of her as the child I failed to see in time. Do not turn her away, Alistair. Not for pride, nor for convenience, nor for the advice of those who value reputation over mercy. You are free to arrange your life as you will. I ask only that you make room in it for one such lost soul if Providence brings her to your door. You may say this is sentiment. Perhaps it is. But if our house cannot be a shelter to at least one who has nothing, then we have kept these walls for nothing. Your loving mother, Margaret. The page shook between his fingers. Henry Moore. He saw again the girl in his study, standing straight despite the cold, saying, "My name is Isabella Moore. I have no one else and nowhere to go." He saw her in his mother's room, speaking of a visit in the night, repeating the phrase his mother had written. They owe you more than they know. He had sent her away. He folded the letter with care and slid it into his breast pocket, close to his heart. For a moment, he stood motionless. Then he strode out of the room and down the corridor, his steps quick and sure. In the hall he nearly collided with Mrs. MacDougall. "Your Grace," she gasped. "I was coming to you. I thought you might wish to know that Miss Moore has left the grounds." She went down the road toward the village not an hour past. "I know," he said. "I ordered it." He took a breath. "I was wrong," he added. "I intend to correct it." The housekeeper stared. "Your Grace, have one of the stable boys saddle a horse," he said. "Now. And tell the kitchen to keep some soup warm. She looked as if a stiff wind might carry her off last I saw her." Mrs. MacDougall recovered herself. "Yes, Your Grace," she said. "At once." Alistair did not wait for the boy. He went to the stable himself, threw a saddle onto the first suitable horse, and swung up with a practiced motion. The cold air bit at his face as he urged the animal down the drive and through the gates. The road to the village was rutted but empty. The sky hung low. He scanned the path ahead, his chest tight. If she had taken any other direction, if she had found shelter in a cart or in some cottage, he would have trouble finding her. But he could not imagine her going far. She had no money enough for a carriage, no relatives to seek. Halfway to the village he saw a small figure walking along the verge, shawl pulled tight, bundle under one arm. "Isabella," he called, without thinking of titles. She stopped as if struck. He reined in beside her. The horse snorted, tossing its head. She looked up, cheeks red from the cold, eyes wary. "Your Grace," she said, "is something the matter?" "Several things," he replied. "Most of them my own doing." She stood still, the wind tugging at her skirts. "So you should not be out here alone," he said. "It will snow again before nightfall." "I have no choice," she said. "I had no right to refuse your order." "You had every right to refuse injustice," he said. Her lips parted, then pressed together. "What changed?" she asked quietly. "This morning I was a thief. Now you chase me down the road." He dismounted and took the horse's reins in one hand. "Walk with me," he said, "if you will. The horse can stand a slower pace." She hesitated, then nodded. They walked side by side, the horse's breath steaming in the chill air. "When you left," he began, "I went to my mother's room. I stared at her brooch and thought myself very reasonable. Then a letter fell into my hands. Quite literally. She had written it to me years ago and hidden it among her papers. I had never read it." He drew the folded page from his pocket and held it out. "This is what changed." Isabella took it with cold, stiff fingers. Her eyes moved over the lines. With each sentence, her expression shifted. Confusion, recognition, something like pain. "She knew my father's name," she whispered. "Henry Moore. That is not coincidence." "No," Alistair said. "She wrote of a tenant's child she meant to help and did not. She begged me to make room in my life for one such lost soul if ever she came to my door. Then you appeared, half frozen, telling a tale that I said I could not believe. I chose order over her request. I chose peace of mind over yours. You did not know, Isabella said softly. I knew enough to hesitate, he replied. I knew enough to ask more questions. Instead, I let Graham and Edwin press their talk of reputation and proof. I allowed a brooch, which could have been moved by any hand, to outweigh your word and my mother's. She looked down at the letter again. I do not wish to be a burden to you, she said, nor a test of your conscience. If I return, they will say worse things. They already believe I tried to manipulate you. They may say what they like, he answered. I have listened to them too long. The estate will not crumble because I offer shelter to a woman my mother asked me to protect. She glanced at him. You are certain she meant me? He smiled faintly. She wrote of a tenant named Moore, a daughter left alone. She wrote that the house owed her more than it knew. You came speaking the same words. If I ignore that, I might as well board up her room and pretend she never lived. Isabella folded the letter carefully and held it out to him. I do not know what I am meant to be in your house, she said. I am no lady. I have never been taught to pour tea in drawing rooms or to speak with your friends about Parliament. All I know is work. Then you shall work, he said, but not as a scullery maid. She frowned. What else could I be? He thought for a moment. My mother kept a small account of her own, he said. A fund she used to help tenants, widows, children in need. After she died, the solicitor closed it quietly. He said it was unnecessary. I agreed, because I thought myself practical. I see now that it was cowardice. I mean to restore that work, Isabella. I could use someone who knows what it is to need help and not receive it. Her eyes widened. You would trust me with money? She asked. I would trust you to see who truly needs help, he replied. I would not give you ledgers to sign without oversight. I am not entirely careless. But I would ask you to sit with the housekeeper, with the steward, and listen to the tenants' complaints, to see the cottages and the shops, to tell me when someone slips through the cracks my mother feared. That sounds like a task for someone with more learning than I have, she said. You can read, he said. Yes, she admitted. A little. My mother taught me letters before she died. Then you are already ahead of many, he replied. You have also lived the life my mother described. That is more useful than years of schooling in the wrong subjects. She was quiet for a few steps. And if I refuse? She asked. If I say I am too afraid of being cast out again, of being called a thief the next time some brooch goes missing, then I will find you a place in the village, he said, with a good family. I will see that you have enough to live decently. I will send a pension in your name. I will keep this letter close and remember that when my mother asked one thing of me, I failed to do it. But I will not force you back into a house where you feel unsafe. She looked at him, searching his face. You would let me go, she said slowly. Even now? Yes, he said. The choice must be yours. I have taken enough from you without asking. She stopped walking. He stopped too, turning toward her. You hurt me, she said quietly. More than I expected. I have grown used to doors closing, to people turning away. But when you looked at me and chose not to believe, it cut deeper than I care to confess. I thought you were different. He lowered his gaze. I thought so too, he answered. It seems I am still learning what kind of man I am. If you give me another chance, I mean to be better than the one who sent you down this road. The cold wind brushed their faces. The horse shifted, snorting softly. Isabella drew a slow breath. I do not know how to be anything but what I am, she said. A poor girl with a stubborn heart. If I come back, I will speak when something is wrong, even if it displeases you. I will not pretend to be grateful for injustice. Can you bear that? He looked up, and there was a flash of something like warmth in his eyes. I have borne worse, he said. Silence, for instance. It has not improved the house. She almost smiled. Very well, she said. I will come back. Not for your title, not because your mother asked it, but because I am tired of running from the same cold. If there is work to be done that might spare some child what I endured, I will not turn from it. Relief loosened something in his chest he had not realized was knotted. Thank you, he said simply. He offered her his hand to help her mount the horse behind him. She eyed it, then shook her head. I will walk, she said. I have not forgotten how to use my feet, and it is easier to speak on the ground. As you wish, he replied. They turned back toward Montgomery Hall together. the horse walking alongside them now, patient and unhurried. By the time they reached the gates, the sky had begun to thicken with clouds, but no snow had yet fallen. The house loomed ahead, familiar and strange. At the door, Mrs. McDougall opened before they could knock. She looked from Alistair to Isabella, then stepped aside. "Welcome back, Miss Moore," she said, her tone neutral but her eyes softer than before. "Thank you," Isabella answered. Alistair handed the reins to a waiting boy and turned to the housekeeper. "Mrs. McDougall," he said, "Miss Moore will no longer be assigned to the scullery. She will work with you and Mr. Hardy in matters concerning tenants and household welfare. You will find her a room closer to your own, somewhere she may have a little peace." The housekeeper's brows rose, but she only said, "Yes, Your Grace." "And another thing," he added, "no one in this house is to speak of her as a thief. I have reason to believe the brooch did not move itself, and that she did not move it. Until I know who did, I will not hear her name linked to that word. Make it known." Mrs. McDougall nodded once. "It will be known," she said. Mr. Graham appeared at the end of the hall, as if conjured by the scent of change. "Your Grace," he called, approaching with his usual measured stride. "I did not expect you back so soon. And Miss Moore with you. I was under the impression—" "You were mistaken," Alistair said. "It happens even to the most careful men." The solicitor inclined his head slightly. "I hope you have weighed the consequences of this decision," he said. "There will be talk. Your cousins—" "My cousins have had the run of this house for too long," Alistair cut in. "We will speak of them presently. For now I wish to speak of a different matter." He reached into his coat and drew out a small ledger he had tucked there earlier. "I have been looking over the accounts for the last 10 years, he said, "particularly the parcels of land listed as unproductive and the fees charged to tenants who fell behind. There are patterns I do not like, Mr. Graham, patterns that profit certain pockets more than they do the estate." Graham's face did not change, but his shoulders stiffened almost imperceptibly. "Estate management is a complex art, Your Grace," he said. "There are decisions your late father entrusted to me." "And I am not my father," Alistair replied. "We will review these decisions together, and some of them will be reversed. We will also restore my mother's charitable fund. Miss Moore will assist in identifying those tenants most in need, and we will reduce rents where possible until their circumstances improve." Graham's gaze flickered to Isabella, then back. "You place a great deal of trust in someone whose history you do not fully know," he said. "I know enough," Alistair said calmly, "and what I do not yet know, I will learn. The same applies to every man and woman in this house, including you, Mr. Graham." The solicitor bowed slightly, lips tight. "As you wish, Your Grace," he said. "I will prepare the necessary papers." "Do," Alistair answered, "and send word to Mr. Edwin that I wish to see him tomorrow. There are matters to clarify between us." With that, he turned away, signaling the end of the conversation. He led Isabella and Mrs. McDougall toward the back corridors. The housekeeper paused outside her own smaller sitting room. "We will find you a space near here," she said to Isabella. "You may leave your bundle with me for now. I will see it moved." "Thank you," Isabella said. Alistair gestured toward the staircase. "If you are not too tired," he said, "I would show you something before you rest." She nodded. "I can walk a little longer." They climbed the stairs together and went once more to Lady Margaret's room. Inside, the light was softer. The brooch still lay on the desk beside the open journal. The air felt calmer, as if the room had been holding its breath. Isabella stepped in, her gaze going at once to the smaller portrait of the Duchess. The painted eyes seemed to follow her. "She looks pleased," Isabella murmured. Alistair glanced at the painting. "She always looked that way when she thought she had persuaded someone to do what was right," he said, "even if it cost them." He went to the desk and picked up the brooch. "I found this in my coat pocket just now," he said. "When we returned. I had not put it there. I remember leaving it on the desk earlier." Isabella's eyes widened. "Someone moved it again," she said. "Or something," he replied. "I no longer pretend to be certain of what is possible." He set the brooch back on the desk with care. "For now," he said, "it will stay here. Not in a drawer to be hidden, not in a box to be forgotten. Visible, where it can remind me to ask questions before I judge." Isabella looked at the portrait again. "You will fight them," she said quietly. "Your cousins." Mr. Graham, all who prefer things as they were. I will, he answered, not with fists or shouting, with papers and numbers and choices they cannot easily undo. They will not like it, but they do not have to live with my conscience. I do. He turned to her. And you, he added, will help me see what my numbers do not show. The cold in a cottage, the hunger behind a polite, "We are managing." Can you do that? She met his gaze steadily. I can, she said. And I will tell you truths you may not wish to hear. A fair bargain, he said. I will try to listen even when it stings. For a moment they stood in silence, the portrait watching them. There is one more truth, he said at last, his voice lower. One I owe you. She waited. When I chose to send you away, he said, I did not do it because I believed in my heart that you were a thief. I did it because I was afraid of losing control of a house I barely manage, afraid of what Graham and Edwin would say, afraid of how easily you had slipped past my defenses with your story and your eyes that refused to lower when they should. It was cowardice, Isabella, nothing less. Her throat tightened. I did not expect you to say that, she said. I did not expect to say it, he replied. But if we are to begin again, it must be on clearer ground. I cannot ask you to trust me without admitting the ways I have failed you. She drew a breath. You did fail me, she said quietly. You hurt me, but you came after me. You brought this letter. You opened this room again. That must count for something. He smiled, small and unsteady. I hope it will, he said. Then let us count it, she answered. They stood there a moment longer, surrounded by the quiet. Go and rest now, he said gently. Mrs. McDougall will show you your new room. Tomorrow we will begin. There is much to do. She nodded. As you wish, Your Grace, she said, then added more softly, Alistair. He looked at her, surprised. You did not call me that before, he said. I did not feel I had the right, she replied. I still do not, in public. But your mother did, and you speak to me now as if I were something more than a pair of hands. I thought perhaps in this room it might be allowed. He held her gaze. In this room, he said, I think she would approve. A warmth settled between them, quiet and deep. Isabella turned toward the door. As she stepped out into the corridor, she felt just for an instant a lightness at her shoulder, as if a hand had rested there in blessing. She did not look back to see if the portrait had changed. Some things were better kept in the heart. She went to find her new room, her steps tired but steady, knowing that the next day would not bring peace, but purpose. Winter did not end because Alistair Montgomery decided to change his life, but the house felt different within days. Servants whispered less and watched more. Mrs. McDougall walked the corridors with her usual firmness, but there was a new alertness in her eyes, as if she expected old habits to shift under her feet. Mr. Graham spent long hours in his room with ledgers, and when he moved about the house, he did so with a tightness in his jaw that had not been there before. Isabella felt all of it. She rose early, met Mrs. McDougall in the small sitting room and learned to listen in new ways. Tenants came with small petitions, a broken fence, a roof that let in water, a cow lost on the road. She watched their faces, heard the weariness behind their formal words, and asked questions that sometimes surprised them. Do your children have boots? She would say. Do you have enough to eat when the month turns? It is not begging to answer honestly. Some tried to hide their need out of pride. She recognized it. She had worn that same stiffness when she'd had nothing. Little by little, reports reached Alistair. He sat with them in the evenings, Isabella on a chair opposite, Mrs. McDougall with a notebook at the side, Mr. Hardy the steward hovering at the door. We can reduce the rent there for a season, Alistair would say, tapping a name. They've had 2 bad harvests, and this cottage, we have patched that roof 3 times. It should be done properly. I will not pay a 4th repair for the same shoddy work. Mr. Hardy nodded, scribbling. Graham was less accommodating. This is all very noble, he said one evening, standing by the fireplace with a ledger in hand. But charity has limits, Your Grace. The estate can only bear so much. We are not bleeding the coffers dry, Alistair replied calmly. We are ceasing to bleed the tenants. There is a difference. He turned a page. There is also the matter, he added, of these parcels of land you declared unproductive and arranged to be sold to a company in Edinburgh, a company that seems, curiously, to have you and my cousin Edwin among its investors. The room went quiet. Graham's face smoothed into a careful blank. Investment is not a crime, Your Grace, he said. You were informed of all sales. I was informed in very small print, Alistair answered, and at a time when I trusted my father's man too much to question him. That has changed. We will discuss that change at length tomorrow. He closed the ledger. In the meantime, he went on, I would have you know that whatever influence you have enjoyed over this estate will not extend to Miss Moore. You do not speak to her without going through me or Mrs. McDougall. You do not threaten her position. Is that clear? Graham's nostrils flared, but he bowed. As you wish, Your Grace, he said softly. The next day, invitations went out. Not elegant cards with gold edges, only brief formal notes requesting the presence of certain people in the great drawing room at noon. Edwin, Graham, the steward, a few local gentlemen who held interests in the estate, and representatives of the household staff. Is it wise to call them all together? Mrs. McDougall asked, as she watched Alistair sign the last note. It is necessary, he replied. Too many decisions in this house have been made in shadow. This one will not be. Isabella folded one of the sealed notes, her fingers trembling just enough to betray her nerves. Must I be there? She asked. I am only a servant, or something close to one. You are the reason I woke from a sleep I did not know I was in, he said quietly. You will stand where you can see. You need not speak unless you wish to, but I will not have you hidden away while others discuss the work you have helped me begin. She swallowed and nodded. At noon, the great drawing room filled. Edwin arrived with his usual flair, a bright waistcoat and a smile that never reached his eyes. The lady in blue came as well, out of curiosity if nothing else. Mr. Graham stood near the mantel, thin and composed. Mr. Hardy, the steward, hovered by the door, ready with notes and numbers. A small group of senior servants stood at the back. Mrs. McDougall, Mrs. Harris from the kitchen, one of the older footmen. Isabella slipped among them, feeling their shoulders close on either side. Mary, bold and wide-eyed, had somehow squeezed herself into the line as well. Stand still, girl, Mrs. McDougall murmured. If anyone asks why you are here, say you were told to be. I was, Isabella whispered back. Alistair entered last. He wore no special finery, only a dark coat and steady eyes. When he crossed the room, people fell silent. Thank you for coming, he said. I will not keep you longer than necessary. There are matters we must settle in the open, rather than in private conversations that leave too much unsaid. Edwin smiled lazily. Cousin, this sounds ominous, he said. If you mean to disinherit us all and leave the estate to the kitchen cat, say so at once. A few people chuckled, uncertain. Alistair did not. I mean to speak of mismanagement, he said, of choices made in my name that have enriched a few at the cost of many, and of the direction this house will take from this day forward. He nodded to Mr. Hardy, who stepped forward with a bundle of papers. For years, Alistair went on, certain parcels of land have been listed as unproductive. On that basis, they were sold, often at low prices, to a company in Edinburgh, which then resold them at profit. Tenants were removed with little warning. Fees for late rent were added with interest that is nowhere justified in our own books. He took one of the papers from Mr. Hardy. The company purchasing these parcels, he said, is called Marestone Holdings. Its investors include Mr. Graham, our solicitor, and my cousin Edwin. A murmur swept the room. Edwin's smile thinned. You make it sound very dramatic, Edwin said. In truth, we invested in land that your own advisers declared of little use. We took the burden off your hands, that is all. You took more than that, Alistair replied. You took houses from families who had worked them for generations and then profited from their desperation. Mr. Graham lifted his chin. Your Grace, you signed every sale, he said. I presented the documents. You gave your consent. I signed them trusting the men my father entrusted with this estate, Alistair answered. That trust was misused. That is my fault as much as yours. The difference is that I intend to correct it. He looked at the small knot of servants at the back. His gaze brushed over Isabella's face briefly, steadying her. In the last weeks, he said, I have sent Miss Moore to speak with tenants. I have seen with my own eyes what your decisions have cost. Children with no shoes, old men working fields that once belonged to them for wages that do not cover their food. This is not the estate my mother wished to leave behind. Edwin's eyes flicked to Isabella, cold and sharp. So, he said, we arrive at the heart of it. The kitchen maid turned conscience. You alter your entire management because a girl tells you a sad story. She told me many stories, Alistair said. Most of them not about herself. All of them echoed what my mother wrote years ago. I ignored her once and nearly repeated an old failure. I will not do so again. The lady in blue tilted her head. I must confess, Your Grace, she said lightly. I am curious. Is it true what they say? That your late mother appeared in this girl's dreams and sent her to you? It is a charming tale. Very Gothic. Several faces turned toward Isabella. She felt the heat rise in her cheeks, but she kept her voice calm. I do not claim to understand what happened, she said. Only that a woman who looked like the Duchess came to me when I had no hope left and told me to knock at this door. She spoke of debts owed to the forgotten. Whether she came from heaven or from my own weary mind, I cannot say, but if the result is that some of those forgotten are seen at last, I will not be ashamed of it. A few servants exchanged glances. Someone at the back muttered a quiet, "Hear, hear," before falling silent. Edwin gave a dismissive laugh. Listen to her, he said. She speaks like a preacher. If you wish to turn Montgomery Hall into a shrine, cousin, do so. But do not drag the estate into ruin because a poor girl weeps prettily. It was not pretty, Isabella thought. It was raw. It cost her something every time she spoke in this room. Alistair's voice cut through the tension. I have heard enough, he said. Mr. Graham, you will resign your position as solicitor to this family. A collective intake of breath sounded. Graham's eyes flashed. You cannot be serious, he said. Your father, my father is dead, Alistair replied. He trusted you. I did as well. You used that trust to line your own pockets and those of my cousin. You may keep what is legally yours. I will not drag this family through courts if I can avoid it. But you will have no further say in its affairs. I will settle whatever accounts are due and we will part ways. Graham's lips whitened. You are making a mistake, he said quietly. Perhaps, Alistair answered. If so, it will be my mistake, not yours, for once. He turned to Edwin. As for you, he went on, you are welcome to remain my cousin. You are not welcome to remain my advisor. I will not consult you on estate matters. I will not invest in your schemes. If you wish to profit from land, do so elsewhere. But do not expect this house to feed your appetite. Edwin's smile vanished. You shame me in front of servants, he said, over the words of a girl you hardly know. No, Alistair replied. I shame you over ledgers I have read with my own eyes. Miss Moore merely showed me where to look. Edwin glanced at Isabella again, and there was something in his gaze that made her spine chill. Not desire, not exactly, resentment. As if she had somehow stolen a position he considered his. You will regret this, he said to Alistair. Society will laugh. You, the dukeling who chose a charity case over his own kin. I would rather stand with those I respect than dine with those I do not, Alistair answered. If society finds that amusing, so be it. For a long moment the two men stared at each other. Then Edwin gave a short bow, almost mocking. Very well, cousin, he said. Keep your conscience. I will keep my investments. We shall see which one warms your bed when you are old. He turned on his heel and strode from the room. Graham followed more slowly, his face pale, his eyes cold. When they were gone, the air seemed to loosen. Alistair looked around the room. I do not call you here to feed gossip, he said. I call you to tell you that this house will change. Some of you will welcome that, some will not. But the days when decisions were made for the estate's convenience alone are done. If you serve here, you serve under that understanding. He paused, letting his gaze rest briefly on each cluster of faces. If any of you feel you cannot, he added, you may come to me privately. I will not hold you where you are unhappy, but I will not bend this new course for anyone's comfort, including my own. There was a murmur of assent, hesitant but real. Mrs. Harris cleared her throat. Begging your pardon, Your Grace, she said, but if it means the tenants will stop sending their children to us asking for scraps because they've had no wages in weeks, I am in favor. I have seen enough hollow faces to last me a lifetime. Mr. Hardy nodded. It will not be easy, sir, he said, but it will be right. Alistair inclined his head. Thank you, he said. That is all for now. People began to drift out, talking in low voices. Mary grabbed Isabella's hand. You stood there like a queen, she whispered. Did you see Edwin's face? Like he had swallowed vinegar. Hush, Isabella said, though a small, shaky smile touched her lips. He will hear you even from the stables. Let him, Mary answered, unrepentant. We have you, and we have his grace, and that is more than we had last month. She squeezed Isabella's fingers and ran off to the kitchen. Mrs. McDougall touched Isabella's arm. You did well, she said quietly. I did not do much, Isabella replied. I only told the truth. Truth is not a small thing in houses like this, the housekeeper answered. Do not belittle it. Soon the drawing-room emptied. Only Alistair and Isabella remained, the wide space between them suddenly feeling more intimate than when it had been full. He exhaled, as if he had been holding his breath through the whole gathering. You looked ready to bolt, he said, a faint smile in his voice. I feared my knees would fail me, she admitted. But they held. They did, he said. Better than some men's courage. They stood there, not quite facing each other, as if both were shy of the quiet. You have changed everything, Isabella said softly. In so short a time. No, he replied. You and my mother did that. I merely stopped resisting. He stepped closer. I wish, he said, that she could see this. The house holding its breath, then breathing differently. Perhaps she does, Isabella said. If not, I will tell her, when I see her. You know I talk too much. He smiled. I have never found your voice unwelcome, he said. There was a small silence. It was not comfortable at first. It felt edged with something new. Will you walk with me? He asked. Just a short turn. I find I am poor company for myself today. Of course, she replied. They went out into the hallway and then, instead of turning toward his mother's room, turned toward a narrow passage that led to the small garden at the back. The air was cold but still. Patches of frost clung to the edges of the paths. They walked side by side. Do you regret it? Isabella asked after a moment. What you did in there? Dismissing Mr. Graham, cutting your cousin off from your affairs. I regret that it took me so long, he answered. Nothing more. Even if it cost you invitations, she said. Approval, a smooth life. I have had a smooth life, he replied. It did not make me happy. She looked at him, surprised. You did not seem unhappy, she said. Only distant. That is another word for hollow, he said. There were days I moved from room to room like a shadow. I read my mother's words and called them impractical. I let Graham decide for me. I let Edwin be my mask in company. I thought it was easier that way. Perhaps it was. But it was also empty. Then you arrived and accused me. I did not accuse you, she protested. You did, he said, smiling. Not in so many words. With your eyes, with your story, with the way you refused to thank me for scraps when you deserved more. You made me uncomfortable. It was the best thing that has happened to me in a long time. She looked down, flustered. I did not mean to, she said. Perhaps not, he answered. But I am glad. He stopped walking. She halted too. Isabella, he said. She raised her head. His face was serious, but there was a warmth in his eyes she had not seen before, or had not dared to name. There is something I have not said, he went on. Not clearly. I have spoken of duty, of guilt, of my mother's wishes. But I have not spoken of the other reason I came after you on that road. She swallowed. What other reason? She asked, though part of her already guessed. I missed you, he said simply. Not as one misses a servant who does her work well, as a man misses the presence of someone who has become necessary to him. The word hung there, soft and weighty. Nonsense, she said weakly. No one is necessary to a duke. You are to this one, he replied. Her heart beat faster. You hardly know me, she said. We have spoken a few weeks. I lose my temper. I ask impertinent questions. I spill things when I am tired. I am not graceful. I am not trained to stand beside you when you must face your peers. You are honest, he interrupted. You are brave. You look at me as if I am a man first and a duke second. Do you know how rare that is? I have been surrounded for years by people who want something from my title, or who wish the man beneath it would behave according to their design. You are the first person in a long time who has wanted neither. Her voice was barely a whisper. What do you think I want? She asked. I do not know, he said. That is what I mean to ask. He took a breath as if steadying himself. "I care for you, Isabella," he said. "I think of you when you are not in the room. I listen differently now because I hear your questions in my mind. When you walked down that road with your bundle, I felt as if the house itself had emptied. These are not small things. They are not duties. They are not debts. They are affection, respect, and more if I am honest." Her eyes stung. "Do not say such things," she whispered. "You will regret them later." "I will not," he said. "I have regretted too much unsaid already. I will not add this to the list." She shook her head. "You are a duke," she said. "I am a tenant's daughter who came begging at your door. If you speak like this and someone hears, they will say I ensnared you, that I used your grief, that I crept from the kitchen to your heart, like some cat in the night." "Let them talk," he replied. "They will talk anyway. Let them at least talk of something that makes me happy." He took a small step closer. "I am not asking you to play a game," he said. "I am asking you from the truest part of myself if you think you could ever care for me in return. Not for the estate, not for the title, not for my mother's memory. For me." She laughed then, a small, incredulous sound, half tears. "Do you not know?" she said. "Do you not see it when I cannot look at you without my chest aching? When I stay awake at night remembering how you defended me in front of them all? When I find myself smiling like a fool because you agreed to cut a rent or fix a roof? I tried to call it gratitude. It is not. It is something larger and more terrifying." "Name it," he said, his voice rough. "Love," she whispered. "There. Now we are both foolish." He closed his eyes briefly, as if absorbing the word. When he opened them again, his gaze was very steady. "In that case, he said, I would be the greatest fool in Scotland if I did not ask you the only question that makes sense." He did not kneel. It did not feel like a moment for gestures learned from other men. He simply stood before her, his sincerity more formal than any ceremony. "Will you marry me, Isabella Moore?" he asked. "Not as an act of charity, not as a whim, but as a promise. I cannot offer you a simple life. There will be gossip. There will be resistance. There will be days when we quarrel, because you will tell me truths I do not wish to hear. But I can offer you this house as your home, these lands as your concern, and my heart as yours. Will you take them?" Her breath caught. For a second, the world narrowed to his face, his words, the desperate hope in his eyes that he was trying to hide. "I am afraid," she said. "So am I," he answered. She swallowed. "Will you let me answer as I am?" she asked. "Without thinking of what society will say? Without measuring the distance between my name and yours?" "Yes," he said. "Then," she whispered, her voice trembling, "yes, I will marry you. Not because you are a duke, not because your mother would be pleased, because when I picture any kind of future, you are in it. If I must face whispers, I would rather face them at your side than stand in silence somewhere else." Something bright and fierce broke over his face, wiping away years of reserve. "Thank you," he said almost on a breath. "You cannot know what you have given me." He reached for her hand then, very gently, as if asking permission. She gave it. His fingers closed around hers, warm and firm. For a moment they stood that way, looking at one another, the cold of the garden forgotten. "May I?" he asked softly. "Kiss you?" She felt the heat rush to her cheeks, but she did not look away. "Yes," she said. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to step back. She did not. His lips met hers in a kiss that was careful and deep at once, like a vow made without words. There was no haste in it, only certainty. When they parted, she let out a shaky laugh. "If this is what comes of knocking on strange doors," she said, "I recommend it to no one but myself. My heart could not bear it twice." He smiled, resting his forehead lightly against hers for a brief moment. "Let us go inside," he said. "If we stay out here much longer, Mrs. MacDougall will come searching and scold us both." "She will scold you?" Isabella asked, amused. "She has known me since I was in leading strings," he replied. "She is one of the few souls who still dares." They walked back toward the house, hand in hand, releasing each other only when they reached the door. News of their engagement spread quickly. Some reacted with open delight. Mary nearly exploded with joy. "I knew it," she declared in the pantry. hugging Isabella so hard she nearly dropped a bowl. The way he looked at you. I told Tess I did. I said, "Mark my words, our Isabella will be mistress of this house." She laughed at me. She will not laugh now. "Do not crow too loudly," Isabella warned, though she could not stop smiling. "Your voice carries." "Let it," Mary said. "The walls have heard worse since I came here." Others were more cautious. The lady in blue came to her one afternoon, finding her in the morning room with a list of tenants' names in hand. "So," the lady said, seating herself with graceful ease, "you have captured the most elusive bachelor in Scotland. You must tell me your secret." "There is no secret," Isabella answered. "I knocked at his door. He opened it. We both refused to let the other look away." The lady laughed. "You will be a strange duchess," she said, "and perhaps the best sort." Mr. Hardy bowed more deeply than before whenever he saw Isabella. Mrs. Harris made sure there was always something extra on the table when she passed through the kitchen. Mrs. McDougall stood a little straighter, a glint of pride in her eyes. Not everyone approved, of course. Rumours reached them from Edinburgh. Some called it a madness, a romance unworthy of the title. A few old friends of the family sent letters filled with careful concern. Alistair read them, smiled faintly, and filed them away. "I have made worse mistakes for smaller reasons," he said to Isabella. "If they call this one a scandal, I will bear it gladly." Their wedding was simple, but not small. The chapel on the grounds filled with more villagers than nobles. Tenants came in their best clothes, faces glowing with a mix of curiosity and affection. The staff stood in a bright row along the side. Mary cried from the opening hymn and did not stop until the last blessing. Isabella wore a dress Mrs. McDougall and the village seamstress had pieced together, straightforward and lovely. As she walked down the aisle on her own 2 feet, without father or brother, she did not feel alone. Every step echoed the long, cold walk she had made to the house on the hill. But this time the door at the end of the path stood wide open. Alistair waited, his gaze never leaving her. When the vows were spoken, they were plain, without flourishes. He promised to honour and cherish her. She promised to stand beside him, to speak truth even when it cost her. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, the joy that swept through the chapel felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. Later, after modest celebrations in the hall, after the villagers had gone home and the staff had drifted back to their duties with tired smiles, Alistair led Isabella up the familiar stairs one more time. "Again?" she asked, amused. "We spend more time in that room than in any other." "As it should be," he said, "today in particular." They entered Lady Margaret's room together. The portrait watched them, serene as ever. The brooch lay on the desk. Isabella stepped forward and touched the edge of the frame. "Your son has done well," she said softly. "He has made enemies in the right places and friends where it matters. I cannot answer for what you see from where you are, but from here, he is becoming the man you hoped." Alistair came to stand beside her, his hand finding hers again. "I wish I could introduce you properly," he said to the painted face. "Mother, this is Isabella. She is everything you wrote of, and more. She will not let me grow lazy in my conscience. I suspect you chose her for that reason." A quiet settled around them. For a moment, both of them felt something, a warmth in the air, a sense of approval that did not come from any visible source. It might have been only their hearts answering each other. Or it might have been a blessing. The brooch moved, not much, just enough to tilt a fraction as if a finger had nudged it, though neither of them was near. Isabella's breath caught. Alistair's hand tightened on hers. "Did you see that?" she whispered. "I did," he said softly. They did not rush to explain it. Some mysteries could remain what they were. He picked up the brooch. "This should be yours," he said, fastening it carefully at her shoulder. "Not because it proves anything, but because it suits you. It belongs on someone who remembers what it stands for." "What does it stand for?" she asked. He thought for a moment. "For the idea that a house as grand as this owes its strength to those who have nothing," he said. "For the truth that love can cross gaps of time and class and still be itself. For second chances. For doors opened instead of closed." She touched the brooch lightly, feeling the cool metal warm beneath her fingers. "I will wear it," she said, "and when people ask, I will tell them your mother gave it to me." He smiled. "Tell them what you like," he replied. You have earned the right to name your own story." They stood there a while longer, in the room that had once held only memory and now held their beginning. Outside, the winter was not yet over. There would be storms still and hard years, and quarrels over fields and roofs and wages. But in the house on the hill, something had shifted for good. A poor girl who had knocked on a door now walked its halls as mistress, not by gift alone, but by courage. A duke who had once hidden behind ledgers now faced his choices with open eyes. Together, they turned their faces toward a future in which truth and mercy sat at the same table. And for those who passed by on the road below and looked up at the great house, the light in its windows seemed less distant than before, as if it too had learned to open its heart. Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.